There is a treasury vast beyond measure, and it is nearer to you than your very breath. In it lies the gold, the silver, the jewels, and the currency of the world, and none may lock it from you but yourself. Tonight I shall show you the key. You will leave this hall knowing how to open the invisible vault and claim 50 million as though it had been yours from the foundation of the world. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. These words are not the echo of some distant deity speaking from a throne beyond the stars. They are the living utterance of the Eternal One who abides within you, nearer than breathing, closer than hands and feet. When you hear the Lord, you must learn to hear it as the name of your own awareness, the I am within you, that which was before all worlds and without which nothing could be. To say, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, is to declare that all forms of wealth and abundance are already the rightful possession of your own being. If the Lord is your own I am, then the silver and gold are yours now, though unseen, though uncounted by the banks of the outer world, though no man may yet affirm it with his eyes. This is the first truth that must take root in the soil of your mind. There is no separation between you and the infinite supply of the universe. The owner of all treasures is your very self in its highest aspect. The moment you divide yourself from that owner, imagining some external power to be the giver and yourself the beggar, you cut the cord to your inheritance. You cannot beg for what is already yours. You cannot plead for what has been yours since the foundation of the world. You can only claim it, not with grasping hands, but with the quiet, immovable conviction that it is so. Let us take the imagery of silver and gold as more than mere metals. They represent every form of substance, supply, and security that man desires. They are the symbol of the infinite abundance of life itself. And in the scriptures' proclamation, they are declared to be the possession of the Lord. If you hear those words with the old, unawakened ear, you will say, yes, the Lord up there, the Almighty above, owns the riches of the earth. And you will remain poor, for you have placed the treasure outside yourself. But if you hear them with the awakened ear, you will say, yes, the Lord within me, my own I am, owns all that is. And if he owns it, I own it, for we are one and not two. You see, it is the nature of man to think of wealth as belonging to someone else. The banker, the ruler, the wealthy neighbor, and himself as the outsider, the one who must earn, trade, or somehow win the right to a small portion. Yet the ancient truth stands unaltered. The Creator and the creation are not separate, and what belongs to the source belongs to its expression. As the branch partakes of the life of the vine, so you partake of the wealth of the Lord. To deny this is to deny your own being. Consider for a moment a king's son. Would the prince in his father's palace plead for food at the table or beg for coins in the market? No, for he knows the wealth of the kingdom is his by birthright. Now imagine that same prince struck with amnesia, wandering the streets, convinced he is a beggar. He might see the palace from afar and believe it belongs to someone else. He might even fear to step near the gates. And all the while, the entire treasury is his, waiting for him to awaken to who he truly is. That prince is man, and the palace is the kingdom within. These words, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, are the voice of the Eternal reminding you of your identity. When you claim them, you are not stealing, you are remembering. The act of remembering is the act of reclaiming. The outer world may not yet reflect it, but the inner recognition is the seed from which the harvest must come. Let me share with you a simple story. A woman living in modest means once came to understand this truth. Each day she would rise and, before doing anything else, she would declare inwardly, the silver is mine and the gold is mine. All that I require is already mine. She did not chant it mechanically, but allowed herself to feel the quiet joy of possession. Within a few months, her circumstances shifted dramatically. A property thought to be of little value was sold at a price she had never dreamed possible. She moved into a life of ease and abundance. The sale was not a miracle in the eyes of the world, for the outer reason could be explained: a new buyer, an unexpected demand. Yet she knew the cause was within. She had aligned herself with the truth, and the outer rearranged itself accordingly. The mind will always seek to argue. If it is mine, it says, why do I not see it? Why does my account remain small, my purse light? And here is the answer: the outer is but the shadow of the inner state. You do not see the wealth until you have accepted it inwardly, and you cannot accept it inwardly while entertaining doubt, fear, and the sense of separation from your source. To say, the silver is mine, while secretly believing it is not, is to plant seeds in one breath and uproot them in the next. You must understand that possession begins in consciousness. Long before a man holds a coin in his hand, he must hold the certainty of ownership in his mind. All things in the outer are but crystallized thoughts. A merchant may hold goods in his shop, yet the goods existed first as an idea in someone's mind. The design of the fabric, the plan of the maker, the vision of the seller. So too with wealth, it exists first in your inner recognition, in your acceptance of its reality within you. Only then will it clothe itself in the visible form of currency, property, or opportunity. Do you think these words are merely poetic? Then look to the lives of those who live by them. There is a quiet assurance about them. They do not chase wealth with desperation, nor do they shrink in the presence of it. They know that all things are already theirs in the unseen, and so they carry themselves as owners. And because the outer world mirrors the inner, ownership in consciousness draws ownership in fact. Recall the ancient promise, all that the Father hath is mine. This is not the boast of arrogance, but the statement of unity. If the life within you is the life of the source, then you cannot lack what the source possesses. The life within you is not a portion of the infinite. It is the infinite expressed through you. Therefore, to deny that you possess all is to deny the very life that sustains you. You may ask, if all is mine, why must I claim it? Should it not simply appear? Consider the child of great wealth who inherits an estate. The estate may be legally his, but he must grow into the awareness and capacity to manage it. So it is with the riches of life. You must grow into the conscious ownership of them. Claiming is not grasping, it is aligning. It is the act of lifting your thoughts, feelings, and identity into harmony with the truth. A man once told me of a season in his life when he was burdened by debt. Every bill that arrived seemed a reminder of his lack. One day, in the stillness of thought, he heard within himself the words, "The silver is mine, and the gold is mine." Something in him stirred. He began to repeat them, not as a plea, but as a fact. When the bills came, he would look at them and quietly affirm, "The silver is mine, and the gold is mine. The means to meet these is already mine." He refused to give the outer the authority to dictate his inner state. In less than a year, the debts were cleared, and opportunities for income appeared in ways he could not have planned. The world called it coincidence. He knew it was law. You must learn to live from this inner knowing, not merely visit it. To live from it is to let it color every thought, word, and action. It is to walk into a room without the consciousness of being less than any man, for you know that the same life animates you both. It is to see wealth and beauty in another's possession and feel no envy, for you know you draw from the same limitless source. It is to plan and act not from fear of loss, but from the security of infinite supply. When you take these words into yourself, "The silver is mine and the gold is mine," take them not as the language of metaphor, but as the declaration of truth. Speak them quietly within, not to convince some outer deity, but to remind your own mind of what it has too long forgotten. Let them be to you as the gentle turning of the soil before the seed is planted, softening the ground of consciousness, so that the thought of wealth may take root and grow. And as you continue in this remembrance, something will shift. You will find your inner conversations changing. Where once you might have said, "I cannot afford it," you will say, "All that I require is already provided." Where once you saw only obstacles, you will see channels through which supply may flow. This is the inevitable result of aligning with the truth of ownership. The mind begins to think as an owner, and the world begins to respond as to an owner. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine. Say it until the words are no longer merely words, but the very atmosphere you breathe. Say it until the feeling of possession rises unbidden, until you can look upon your present circumstances and feel as though they were but the prelude to a greater scene already set in motion. For in truth, that greater scene is already complete in the unseen. You are not bringing it into being, you are awakening to it. The world will tell you that wealth belongs to the few, that it is hard to come by, that you must labor endlessly to earn your portion. But the ancient truth declares otherwise. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine. And if the I am within you is the possessor, then you cannot be the dispossessed. To see yourself as poor is to believe a lie. To see yourself as the heir of all is to believe the truth. And as you believe, so it shall be done unto you. The moment you truly accept this, not as wishful thinking, but as a fact of being, the outer must eventually reflect it. For the outer is powerless to resist the inner image. It may delay, but it cannot deny. Just as a seed planted in fertile ground will, in time, break through the soil, so the seed of ownership planted in consciousness will break through into visible form. And so I say again, hear these words with the awakened ear: the silver is mine, and the gold is mine. Let them ring in you until every thought of lack is silenced, until every fear of insufficiency is dissolved, until you walk in the quiet dignity of one who knows that all he requires, all he desires, all he will ever need is already his in the treasury within. All manifestation begins and ends within the mind of man. Before a coin can rest in the palm, before a note can be counted, before a treasure chest can be opened, it exists already in a realm invisible to the eye, yet utterly real to the one who knows. The truth is as ancient as the hills, as within, so without. Whatever you accept inwardly must, by the law of life, find a way to clothe itself in the outer world. The world you now see, the circumstances in which you now move, are the shadow cast by your inner state of consciousness. To change the shadow, you must first change the substance that casts it. The inner law is simple in statement, but profound in its working. You cannot bring forth in your outer world what you have not already assumed to be true within yourself. The form may be invisible now, but the reality exists in the unseen as surely as a seed buried in the soil contains the whole tree. It is there, but it awaits your recognition. To desire a thing while believing you do not yet have it is to stand before a sealed door, knocking without end. To assume it already yours is to step across the threshold and live as one who belongs in the house. The difference between hoping and assuming is the difference between looking at a distant shore and standing upon it. Hope is a vision that remains afar. Assumption is the act of claiming it here and now. When you assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled, you take possession in the only realm where possession is truly possible, the realm of consciousness. And consciousness, being the one reality from which all else flows, must eventually bring your assumption to pass in the visible. Consider the winning of a great fortune. It already exists. The notes are already printed, the gold already stored, the figures already resting in some ledger or account. You are not creating the wealth, you are aligning yourself with it. If you walk the streets thinking, one day perhaps, it will be mine, you place it always in a future that never arrives. But if you walk with the inner knowing, it is mine now, though unseen, you call it into your present, and the channels by which it comes are opened without your needing to direct them. A man I once knew lived for years in moderate comfort, but dreamed of great wealth. He worked diligently, saved carefully, but his mind remained fixed on the idea that wealth was something to be earned over long decades. Then one evening, he heard the truth that all things already exist in the unseen and need only be claimed in consciousness. That night, he lay down in his bed and imagined himself already in possession of a vast sum, so vast that the worry of money no longer existed in his life. He felt the freedom of it, the lightness of walking into any place, and knowing he could have whatever he chose. He kept this state nightly, refusing to think of how it might come. Within months, he received an unexpected inheritance from a relative he barely knew. A sum that matched, almost to the figure, the amount he had inwardly possessed. You may think this a strange coincidence. It is not. It is law. The state you occupy inwardly draws to itself the outer events, people and circumstances that match it. You cannot plant the seed of a rose and expect a thorn bush. You cannot plant the seed of wealth and reap poverty. Yet so many plant seeds of lack by dwelling in the thought, I do not have enough, and are surprised when the harvest matches the seed. To dwell in the end is to take your place in the finished picture. The outer world is but a moving shadow, a slow unfolding picture of what you have already accepted inwardly. If you desire to manifest 50 million, you must not approach it as a future goal, but as a present fact in the unseen. You must dwell in the state of already having it. This is not daydreaming, it is disciplined imagining. It is the quiet act of choosing again and again to think from the place you wish to be rather than of it. Do not be deceived by appearances. The world of sense will always lag behind the world of imagination. If you plant a seed today, you do not dig it up tomorrow to see if it has sprouted. You trust the process, knowing that the unseen roots are forming. So it is with assumption. You take the state into yourself and refuse to be shaken by the absence of outer evidence. I recall another story. A woman, deep in financial strain, decided to put this law to the test. She had heard that one must live from the end, and so each night, before sleep, she imagined herself telling a dear friend, I am completely free. I have more than enough for all I desire. She allowed herself to feel the relief, the laughter, the joy of that conversation as though it had truly taken place. Days passed, then weeks, and nothing appeared to change. Yet she persisted, refusing to measure by the outer. Then, without warning, she received an offer for a piece of land she had nearly forgotten she owned. An offer so generous it not only cleared her debts, but left her with a fortune she could not have foreseen. The law is impartial. It will deliver to you whatever you assume to be true, be it wealth or want. If you occupy the state of lack, telling yourself that prosperity is always coming, but never here, you perpetuate the state of waiting. If you occupy the state of abundance, telling yourself it is yours now, you draw it forth. The key is in the present tense of consciousness, not I will be, but I am. Think of a great actor who steps into a role. On stage, he does not pretend, he becomes. His movements, his voice, his manner, all take on the qualities of the character he plays. And for that hour, he lives as the character. So must you become the one who already possesses what you desire. You do not pretend in a shallow way, but immerse yourself until the role is natural. You think as the wealthy think, speak as the wealthy speak, plan as the wealthy plan, not outwardly in show, but inwardly in the quiet theater of your mind. Some will ask, but is it not dishonest to claim I have what I do not yet possess? I say to you, the only dishonesty is to deny the truth of your own being. If the life within you is the source of all creation, then you are not lying when you claim what belongs to that life. You are affirming reality in the higher realm. The lie is the belief in separation, the belief that you and the source of supply are two. Once you understand this, you will cease to chase after wealth as though it were running from you. You will know that wealth is fixed in the unseen, waiting for you to take the place where it already is. And you take that place not by physical movement, but by a shift in consciousness. You leave the land of lack and step into the land of plenty, not in the body, but in the mind. The outer journey will follow, but the inner journey must come first. The one who learns to live in this way finds that life becomes cooperative. People appear at the right time, opportunities open without effort, and what was once a struggle becomes an unfolding. The mind that once sought to manipulate every detail now rests in the assurance that the state assumed will find its own channels. This is the great relief. You do not need to know how. The how is the business of the unseen. Your only work is to maintain the state. There is a discipline to this work. The mind will wander. Old thoughts of lack will arise, but each time they do, you gently bring yourself back to the end, to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You speak within yourself, it is mine now. I live in the abundance of the Lord. And you feel it, not as a forced emotion, but as the quiet certainty of one who knows his place. To illustrate, imagine two men who each desire wealth. The first says, I will be wealthy one day, and lives each day measuring the distance between himself and his desire. The second says, I am wealthy now, and lives each day from the place where his desire is already fulfilled. The first man keeps his wealth in the future, the second draws it into his present. Which one think you will see it clothed in form? When you dwell in the end, you begin to notice small evidences that match your state. Perhaps a debt is unexpectedly forgiven. Perhaps an item you desired is given to you. Perhaps new channels of income appear. These are but the first leaves of the seed you have planted. Do not despise the day of small beginnings. Rejoice in them, for they are proof that the inner state is unfolding. And here is a great secret: the more natural the assumption feels, the swifter its outer appearance. If you must strain to hold it, you are telling yourself it is not yet natural to you. But if you can relax into it, if it feels as though it has always been so, then the law has nothing to delay its expression. This is why repetition in imagination is powerful. Not because the repetition convinces some outer power, but because it convinces you. You may say, but I have assumed before and nothing happened. And I would ask, did you assume or did you merely wish? To assume is to take the state as a fact, to refuse to let the outer sway you. Many plant the seed in the evening and uproot it by morning with doubt. They say, I have assumed, but it does not work. And in that very statement, they confess they never truly assumed. It is the inner law that determines the outer fact, not the reverse. To wait for the outer to change before you change inwardly is to wait forever. You must be the cause, not the effect. You must stand in the truth of your desire fulfilled and let the world adjust to match it. For the world is but the mirror, you are the face it reflects. And so, when you set your desire, whether it be for 50 million or for freedom from all want, you must step into it now. Not tomorrow, not when the evidence comes, but now. Live in the assurance that it is already yours, and the law, being faithful, will bring it to pass in its appointed way and time. Close your eyes for a moment and recognize that the world you see with the outer eye is but the outer garment of your inner vision. Every building, every coin, every written figure in an account, every handshake that sealed a contract, all these were first conceived in the invisible theater of the mind. This invisible world is the workshop of creation, and it is here you must go if you would truly possess the thing you desire. You must be willing to set aside the senses for a little while and walk within, for the senses will only show you what has already been made. They will not show you what is being formed in the depths of consciousness. The act of creating begins in stillness. Just as a sculptor sees in the rough stone the finished statue long before the chisel strikes, so must you see in the blank canvas of your imagination the finished scene of your desire fulfilled. In the matter before us, the possession of great wealth, 50 million or more, you do not begin with numbers, you begin with feeling. For numbers are but the symbols the world uses to measure the invisible feeling of wealth. You must clothe yourself inwardly with the sense of plenty, with the atmosphere of possession, until it becomes as natural to you as breathing. Imagine, then, that you are now in possession of the full sum. Not that it is coming to you, not that you will one day have it, but that it is yours this very moment. What scene would naturally follow such possession? Do not see yourself counting the money for the sake of counting, for that is an act of one who is still proving it to himself. Rather, see yourself engaging in the natural activities that arise when the fortune is already secure. Perhaps you are seated in a quiet room, signing a document that transfers a portion of it to a cause dear to your heart. Perhaps you are receiving a letter of gratitude from someone you have been able to help. Perhaps you are making plans for the estate you will purchase, walking through its rooms as the unquestioned owner. The scene you choose must be one that, if true, would imply without question that your desire has already been fulfilled. If you were truly the possessor of that fortune, what would be happening in your life now that is not happening today? Fix upon that and enter into it. Let it be short, vivid, and filled with sensory detail. Feel the pen in your hand, the weight of the paper beneath your fingers, the tone of voice of the one who speaks to you. Hear the words spoken, see the surroundings, and most of all, feel the inward satisfaction and relief of already having. One woman, wishing to manifest a large sum, chose a scene in which she was standing in her bank, shaking the hand of the manager as he congratulated her on the state of her account. She could feel his hand in hers, hear the warmth in his tone, and sense the solidity of the polished floor beneath her feet. Each night she would step into that moment, not as though it might happen, but as though it were happening. In a matter of weeks, an investment she had almost forgotten about matured far beyond her expectations, and she found herself standing in that very bank, shaking that very hand in the exact way she had imagined. It is not the length of time you spend in the imaginal scene that matters, but the quality of your absorption in it. You could spend an hour in daydreaming without any effect, but a few moments of concentrated, sensory, rich imagining in the state akin to sleep can impress upon your subconscious the truth of the scene, and that impression will set the outer world in motion. The key is to feel it as though it were real now, not as something distant. When you imagine, you must see with the mind's eye, but you must also involve all your senses. If you are imagining the possession of a home, feel the smoothness of the banister under your hand, hear the faint echo of footsteps in the hall, smell the scent of polished wood or fresh flowers. If you are imagining wealth, feel the crispness of the notes, the subtle scent of new currency, the sound of it being counted, not mechanically, but in the natural rhythm of one who has long been accustomed to abundance. These details anchor the scene in your subconscious as reality, for the subconscious accepts that which is vividly felt as fact. The imagination is not a mere place of idle play, it is the divine creative power in action. When you enter a scene in imagination and dwell there until you feel the thrill of reality, you are planting a seed in the only soil where growth is possible. That seed will germinate, and in time, the outer world will be compelled to bear its likeness. You need not concern yourself with how it will happen. The channels will open in their own way. Your task is to remain faithful to the scene, to return to it until it feels like home. Think of the actor again. He does not merely recite lines, he enters into the life of the character. He feels the emotions, adopts the posture, lives the part until it is real to him. In the same way, you must live the part of the one who already possesses what you desire. If you wish for 50 million, you must feel yourself to be the one who has it, not as an intruder trying on a borrowed coat, but as the rightful owner wearing what has always belonged to him. A man once desired to be free from the endless anxiety of financial instability. He chose a scene in which he was seated by the fire, reading a letter from his accountant stating that his investments had grown to a level that ensured his comfort for the rest of his life. He could see the neat handwriting, feel the texture of the paper, hear the quiet crackle of the fire beside him. Night after night he entered that scene until it became so real that he began to feel the peace of it even during the day. Within months, a business venture in which he had placed a modest sum was sold unexpectedly, giving him more than enough to match the very figures he had imagined. It is essential to understand that the scene is not a future projection. The moment you place it in the future, you postpone its reality. You must enter it as a present fact. The subconscious does not operate in the dimension of time as you know it. It responds to the quality of the feeling. If you feel it to be true now, it is accepted as fact and set in motion. You may be tempted to imagine the process by which the wealth will come to you. Resist this. The means are not your concern, the end is your concern. The more you involve yourself in the how, the more you invite doubt, for the outer reasoning mind will tell you the ways it cannot happen. But when you remain fixed in the end, the subconscious, which is connected to all, will orchestrate the means without your conscious effort. There was once a merchant who wished to secure a great contract that would transform his fortunes. Instead of imagining the negotiations or the struggle to outbid his competitors, he imagined himself months later walking into his home with a light heart and telling his wife, "It is done. The business is secure." He felt her arms around him, heard the joy in her voice, and allowed himself to bask in the satisfaction of the accomplished fact. When the contract came, it arrived through an entirely unexpected source, bypassing the competition altogether. The scene he had chosen implied the end was already accomplished, and so it became. The richness of the scene you choose will determine the ease with which you inhabit it. Choose something that delights you, that you can enter into with joy. If your scene feels forced or unnatural, it will be difficult to sustain. Let it be something that springs naturally from the fact of your desire fulfilled, something you would gladly live again and again in your mind. When you engage in this imaginal act, do so in a relaxed, drowsy state, the state akin to sleep. In that condition, the conscious mind's guard is lowered and the subconscious is most receptive to impressions. This is why the moments before sleep are so potent. The images and feelings you impress upon yourself then are carried into the depths of the mind, where they work themselves out without interference. Do not concern yourself with outer appearances that seem to contradict your inner vision. They are the dying echoes of past states you have occupied. If a farmer plants wheat, he does not panic when he sees last season's weeds still standing. He knows the new seed has been sown and will in time cover the field. Likewise, the scene you live in imagination is your new seed. The outer world will, in due season, reflect it. Hold the scene until it possesses the same reality as a memory. Think of a cherished moment from your past, perhaps a time of great joy. Notice how real it feels, how easily you can recall the sights, sounds, and feelings. That is the quality you must bring to your imagined scene. When it feels like something you have already experienced, it is impressed upon the subconscious as reality. Once it is impressed, you will find subtle changes in your daily thoughts and actions. You will begin to think as the one in your scene thinks, to act as he acts, to speak as he speaks. These are not efforts of will, but the natural expression of your new state. And as you live in this way, the outer world will be drawn to conform. The vision in imagination is not a pastime, it is the act of creation itself. It is the beginning and the end of the process. Once you have entered the scene and felt its reality, the rest is inevitable. You may forget it during the day, but it is working beneath the surface. Just as the seed does not cease to grow because the farmer has turned his attention elsewhere, so your imagined scene continues to unfold, unseen until the day it breaks into the visible. It is here, in the quiet, unseen workshop of your mind that you claim your fortune. Not in the bustle of the marketplace, not in the anxious search for opportunities, but in the stillness where you see and feel what you choose to be. And having claimed it there, you will one day hold it in your hands as naturally as you now hold the memory of past events. You must first understand that every visible fact in your world is but the shadow of an invisible cause. The world you see with your eyes is the fruit, the root is within. If you judge the tree by the fruit alone, without acknowledging the root from which it springs, you will ever be misled by appearances. The inner state precedes the outer fact as surely as the seed precedes the harvest. It is an immutable law. What you are inwardly, you will be outwardly, for the outer world is forever mirroring the inner arrangement of your mind and heart. The man who walks in the assumption of wealth, though his purse be empty, is planting the seed of wealth in the garden of his imagination. To the natural eye, he may appear to be deceiving himself, yet to the spiritual eye, he is simply ordering the invisible to shape itself into form. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. When the state is faithfully inhabited, it must, by law, cast its shadow into the world of facts. Consider the seed of the acorn. It does not look like an oak tree, yet the nature of the oak is enfolded within it. If the farmer were to wait to see the oak before planting the seed, he would remain barren forever. Likewise, if you wait for visible proof of your desire before entering its state, you will remain bound to your present circumstances. You must enter the state first, live in it, breathe in it, and persist in it without compromise, knowing it will unfold in perfect order. A man once came to me, distressed over his business failing. His accounts were empty, his credit exhausted, and his confidence shattered. He said, "If only I could see one sign of improvement, I could believe again." I told him, "You have reversed the law. You are waiting for the fruit before planting the seed. Choose now the inner state of a man whose business prospers abundantly, and wear it as you would a garment." He followed the instruction, and though at first it seemed absurd to rejoice over prosperity when creditors were at his door, within weeks, an unexpected contract brought his business more than enough to pay all debts and establish a surplus. The inner state is like a mold into which substance must flow. No craftsman waits for the finished form to appear before shaping his mold. He shapes the mold first. The world is the obedient clay that must fill the mold you fashion in imagination. If the mold is fear, poverty, or doubt, the clay will set into the likeness of those forms. If the mold is confidence, abundance, and joy, the clay will harden into wealth and satisfaction. The parable of the prodigal son illustrates this truth perfectly. When the prodigal came to himself, he said, "I will arise and go to my father." That decision to arise was the assumption of a new state. Though he was still in the far country, surrounded by lack, he inwardly returned to the state of sonship and abundance. The outer journey followed the inner return. He did not wait to have the robe and the ring before he felt himself the son. He felt himself the son, and then came the robe and the ring. In the same way, a woman I knew longed for a home of her own. She lived in a small, rented room with no prospect of change. Yet each night, she would imagine herself stepping through the door of her own house, placing her handbag upon the table, hearing the quiet creak of her own floors. She smelled the scent of polished wood, felt the sunlight streaming through her own curtains. She lived in that inner home for months, never once allowing the outer drabness to rob her of the inner possession. One day, through a chain of events she could never have devised, she was gifted a house by a relative who had never before shown such generosity. Do you see? The cause was not the relative's sudden kindness. The cause was her dwelling in the state of already having. The kindness was simply the shadow cast by that state. When you inhabit a state, the world reshapes itself to reflect that state. The reshaping may come through channels you know, or through channels you could not imagine. You need not concern yourself with the means. The state contains within itself all the means necessary for its manifestation. The acorn does not labor to grow leaves. It simply rests in the assurance of its nature, and the leaves must come. The tragedy of most lives is that men and women look to the outer world for evidence, and in doing so, they bind themselves to the very conditions they wish to escape. They rise in the morning and read the ledger of yesterday's facts, believing them to be final. They do not understand that yesterday's facts are today's shadows, born of states they once inhabited. If they would change the facts of tomorrow, they must change the state of today. I recall a man who was perpetually ill, yet desired health. Each morning, he examined his body for signs of improvement, and finding none, he would sink back into the state of illness. His vigilance over symptoms kept him chained to them. I urged him to turn away from his body entirely and instead live in the joy of perfect health. I asked him to remember times when he was vigorous and strong, to let those memories soak into his imagination until they became present reality within. He persisted, and in time, the outer condition conformed to the inner state, and the illness disappeared. The principle is the same in the matter of wealth. If you dwell in the state of having 50,000, the mind begins to think, feel, and act in harmony with that state. Ideas present themselves, people appear, circumstances arrange themselves as if compelled to honor the assumption. You will find yourself moved to actions that are perfectly natural to the wealthy, and those actions will, in their own way, precipitate the wealth into visibility. But never forget, the action is the servant, not the master. The master is the state. Even the smallest change in state produces a change in fact. A gardener knows that if he changes the seed, he changes the plant. You cannot plant thorns and expect roses. In the same way, you cannot plant the seed of poverty in the mind through thoughts of lack, fear, and resentment, and expect abundance to bloom. One man's fortune may come through a business venture, another's through inheritance, another's through some seeming accident. Do not look to their channels and try to copy them. The channel is the shell, the pearl is the state. Occupy the state, and the shell will form around it in whatever way is natural for you. This law is not concerned with fairness or unfairness as men judge it. It is impersonal, like the law of gravity. It does not ask if you deserve what you assume. It simply produces in form what you persist in feeling to be true. If you feel yourself poor and unworthy, the law will faithfully mirror poverty and unworthiness. If you feel yourself wealthy and favored, the law will mirror wealth and favor. The ancient writer declared, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he." The heart, in the language of Scripture, is the core of your being, the state you most deeply accept as yourself. It is not the fleeting thought, but the sustained mood that writes itself upon the fabric of your world. Change the mood and you change the world. Now, you may say, "But I have tried to think wealth and still I see lack." Then I tell you, you have tried to think wealth while feeling lack. The law responds to the feeling, not the words. Words without the corresponding feeling are like seeds cast upon stone. They cannot take root. You must feel yourself into the state you desire until it is more real to you than the outer fact. Imagine a sculptor who sees in his mind the figure he wishes to bring forth. Though the marble before him is unshaped, he works with the certainty of one who knows the figure is already there. Each stroke of the chisel is guided by the vision within. So must you work upon the marble of your life, guided not by the present form, but by the state you have assumed. You may stand in a field of weeds, yet if you sow roses, the weeds must give way. The present condition is no obstacle to the seed you now plant in imagination. The seed contains its own power to displace what does not belong to its nature. The state precedes the fact. This is the key to all manifestation. And until it is understood, You will forever attempt to change effects while leaving causes untouched. It is like polishing the leaves of a tree while ignoring the health of its roots. The leaves may shine for a day, but the root will dictate their fate tomorrow. If you can truly grasp that the state you occupy now is shaping the fact you will meet tomorrow, you will cease to waste time wrestling with circumstances and instead turn inward to the true workshop of creation. There, in the silence of your own mind, you may clothe yourself in the state of the wish fulfilled, and by dwelling in it faithfully, watch the outer world rearrange itself to mirror that inner clothing. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. If this statement is true, then it follows that you cannot wait for the evidence before you assume the state. You must assume the state before the evidence appears. The act of faith is not some trembling hope that one day circumstances may conspire in your favor. It is the conscious appropriation of the thing desired as though it were already yours, and the steadfast refusal to abandon that assumption no matter what the outer world may declare. This is the very heart of the matter, for if you can hold the feeling of the wish fulfilled in the face of every contrary report, then you have touched the law that governs all creation. Consider the words, "Let the weak say, I am strong." Here is no suggestion of waiting for strength to appear before declaring it. It is a command to speak from the state you wish to embody, to let your words, your feelings, and your thoughts be rooted in that reality long before the world acknowledges it. This is the divine reversal of human thinking. Man waits for proof before believing, the Spirit believes before proof, and thereby compels the proof to appear. In your own life, if you can learn to stand unmoved in the inner conviction of wealth, health, love, or any good thing, even when the senses cry out in contradiction, then you will discover the miracle working power within. You must not confuse faith with stubborn optimism. Faith is not the same as simply wishing. Wishing keeps the thing at a distance. It says, I hope it will come. Faith says, it is here now, and refuses to shift from that position. There is a story of a woman who, in the midst of great financial hardship, determined that she would live as though she already possessed an ample fortune. Each night before sleep, she would enter a vivid scene in imagination in which she counted large sums of money, felt the crisp paper in her hands, and placed it into a gleaming box. Her landlord, seeing her cheerful manner, could not understand why she seemed unaffected by her debts. Within 3 months, a relative she had not seen in 20 years left her an inheritance far greater than her imagined sum. Yet she knew the cause was not the relative's passing, but her unwavering persistence in the state of abundance before any sign of it was visible. This is the act of faith, to clothe yourself in the garment of the desired state and wear it with the dignity of ownership, even when the world tells you you are foolish to do so. Imagine a seed placed in the ground. It is surrounded by darkness, buried beneath the earth. If it could think as men think, it might despair, saying, there is no sign of life, only darkness and pressure. But the seed is not discouraged, for within it is the pattern of the tree, and by its nature it presses upward toward the light. Likewise, when you assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you have planted the seed of that reality in the fertile soil of your consciousness. The darkness of unfulfilled desire is not an absence of progress, it is the necessary condition for germination. Many abandon their assumption too soon. They begin well, they taste the joy of the state, but when outer evidence fails to arrive quickly, they return to their former thinking. They dig up the seed to see if it has sprouted, thereby destroying the delicate process. You must learn to rest in the knowledge that what you have conceived within will, by law, appear without. The outer world is slow to move compared with the speed of thought, but it is compelled to follow. He that believeth shall not make haste. You need not strain, you need only persist. To sustain the feeling in the face of outer contradiction requires inner discipline. It is not a grim effort but a quiet determination, a refusal to be swayed. When you hear news that seems to oppose your desire, do not accept it as final. Let it pass before you as shadows pass before the eyes. The substance remains within. If you have assumed wealth and a bill arrives that you cannot yet pay, do not descend into fear. Handle the bill as one who has abundant resources would handle it. In imagination, pay it gladly, feeling the ease with which it is met. This inward payment will, in due time, find its reflection in the outer world. I recall a man who longed to open a small shop but lacked the capital. Each day, he would walk through the streets as though he already owned the shop, noting where his goods would be displayed, greeting imaginary customers, and feeling the satisfaction of a brisk day's trade. When friends asked what he was doing, he would smile and say, "I am tending my business." They laughed, for they saw no shop, only a man strolling idly. Yet one morning, a former employer, moved by some unaccountable impulse, offered him the exact sum required to secure the premises he had admired. From the moment he accepted the gift, the friends called it luck, he called it law. This law is impartial. It will clothe any state you persist in assuming. If you persist in the state of lack, life will mirror lack. If you persist in the state of wealth, life will mirror wealth. The outer world is a faithful servant to the inner master. But to command it, you must first command yourself. This is why the act of faith is an act of self-government. You are not commanded to wrestle with outer conditions. You are commanded to hold fast to your inner conviction. Hold fast the profession of your faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. The He who promises is none other than the I am within you, and it can no more deny itself than light can deny shining. There is a subtle temptation in times of delay to compromise your vision. You may say to yourself, perhaps I asked for too much, perhaps I should settle for less. The moment you accept less in consciousness, you have altered the seed, and the harvest will be less accordingly. No, if you have chosen to manifest 50,000, you must not shrink to 50,000 simply because the outer world is slow to move. The time between assumption and manifestation is the proving ground of faith. It is here you learn whether you truly believe that the unseen shapes the seen. When doubt whispers in your ear, answer it not with argument but with feeling. Return at once to your inner scene, to the place where you already possess your desire. In that place, there is no doubt, for the thing is already accomplished. This is why the ancients spoke of calling the things that are not as though they were. They understood that to create is to feel and act from the end, not toward it. If you were already in possession of vast wealth, would you fear a delay in payment? Would you tremble at a temporary lack? No, you would move with ease, speak with confidence, and act with generosity. Then begin now to do so inwardly. Let me give you another picture. A playwright completes his script long before the actors step onto the stage. In his mind, the scenes are vivid, the lines are spoken, the story has reached its conclusion. The audience sees it unfold over 2 hours. He saw it complete in an instant. Likewise, when you have assumed the feeling of your fulfilled desire, the play is already written. The world is merely moving through the necessary acts to bring it into view. You are both playwright and actor, but you must never forget that the script is fixed in consciousness before it appears in time. Some will say, but what if I am surrounded by people who constantly speak of lack and limitation? You must guard the sanctity of your inner state. Just as a gardener protects young plants from frost, you must shield your assumption from the cold winds of doubt. When others speak contrary to your vision, you need not argue. Simply remain inwardly anchored in your conviction. Hear their words, if you must, as though they were lines in a play that have nothing to do with you. You live from a different script, and your ending is already determined by the state you have chosen. To live in this manner is to discover a strange and marvelous detachment from appearances. You will find yourself less swayed by the fluctuations of fortune, for you will know that these are but reflections of past assumptions. You will act with a quiet authority, knowing that the unseen cause is secure within you. This is the act of faith, not waiting for the outer world to grant you permission to feel wealthy, but feeling wealthy now and letting the world rearrange itself in obedience to that feeling. And when the manifestation comes, and it must come, you will understand that it could not have been otherwise. The act of faith is the planting, the persistence in that state is the tending, the manifestation is the harvest. The farmer does not dig up his seed each day to see if it grows. He waters it, shields it, and waits in confident expectation. So too must you handle the seed of your desire. Tonight, before you retire, you will take with you the awareness that all things are now yours. Not tomorrow, not when the evidence appears, not when the papers are signed or the funds are transferred, but now. For now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. If you will dare to accept this truth in the stillness of your own chamber, you will walk out of this room already clothed in the garment of your desire, and the world, obedient to the unseen law, will conform itself to the pattern you have assumed. The world has no choice but to mirror the image impressed upon it by your inner conviction. You do not command the outer by force, you command it by the silent act of inward possession. There is a quiet rhythm to creation. It is not born in haste, nor is it delayed by the seeming obstacles of men. All things are brought forth in their appointed hour by the seed that has been planted within the deep of consciousness. And the planting is nothing more than the acceptance, here and now, that it is done. The mind may protest, the senses may deny, but if you will remain faithful to the feeling, if you will rest tonight as one who has already received, you will awaken to find the outer world rearranging itself in ways beyond your power to design. For you are not the architect of the means, you are the possessor of the end. And when the end is felt as real, the means are drawn without your effort, as rivers flow to the sea. Take for a moment the words spoken to the prodigal son upon his return. Son, thou art ever with me, and all that I have is thine. This is not a promise of some distant bestowal, it is the eternal declaration of being to itself. All that I have, every dollar, every opportunity, every connection, every mansion upon the earth, is thine now. The Father does not portion himself in fragments of time. He gives wholly and immediately, for he is the eternal now. But you must receive, not with your hands, but with the imaginal act. You must feel the possession, the ownership, the completion, even while your outer eyes may still see the empty purse. The purse is not the source is the unseen reality you entertain within. This night, therefore, you must make no petition to a distant deity, but rather clothe yourself in the answered prayer. You are not seeking, you are receiving. Imagine the very scene that would follow your possession of that which you desire. If it were 50 million in currency, perhaps you would feel the weight of the bank draft in your hand, or the secure knowledge that your accounts reflect this sum. Perhaps you would hear the congratulatory voices of those who know of your fortune, or sense the still, calm confidence of one whose every need and every wish is abundantly supplied. Whatever form it takes for you, accept it fully, not as a vision of one day, but as the living present. Do not be concerned if the outer seems unchanged when you open your eyes. The seed is not judged by the barren soil above, it is judged by the life hidden within it. No man sows in the evening and digs up the earth in the morning to see if the seed has grown. He trusts the law. And so must you trust the law of consciousness. You have sown tonight the seed of possession. You have entered into the act of faith, the only true faith there is, which is the assumption that it is already accomplished. Remain in that assumption, and the earth will yield its increase. There is a power in resting in the finished work. When you cease to strain, when you cease to wonder and worry, when you cease to demand signs from without, you open the way for the harvest. Many fail because they are still watching the field with impatience, measuring the days and judging the progress. Yet the moment you return to the invisible chamber of your mind and dwell there as the one who already has, the work is done. And in the silence of your sleep, as you surrender to the deeper current, the work continues, for He giveth his beloved sleep. In that sleep, the pattern you have impressed is woven into the fabric of your world. Consider the one who desired a great fortune, but who lived in the most modest of circumstances. Night after night, before closing his eyes, he would sit in his small chair and in the stillness, feel himself in the vast study of his imagined estate. He would run his fingers along the polished mahogany desk, look out upon the sweeping grounds, hear the faint sounds of servants moving through the house, and know that all of it was his. This was no idle fancy. To him, in those moments, it was reality. He rested in it, he slept in it, and in a matter of months, the means unfolded. An inheritance from a forgotten relation came into his hands, together with investments that multiplied themselves in ways his reason could not have foreseen. But the true cause was not the inheritance, it was the nightly possession of the end before a single coin had changed hands. So tonight, your task is not to think of your desire, but from it. You are not to observe it as something out there to be attained. You are to inhabit it as something already received. This subtle shift is the axis upon which the whole law turns. Thinking of implies separation, thinking from implies union. And union is possession. If I think from wealth, I am wealthy. If I think from health, I am healthy. If I think from freedom, I am free. The world will always prove the truth of your inner state, for it is but a shadow cast by the light within. And let me remind you, the feeling you take into sleep is the master key. For in sleep, your conscious defenses are lowered, and the subconscious, which is the womb of creation, receives without question the impressions given to it. That which is impressed upon the subconscious in the drowsy, receptive state will be faithfully reproduced in your waking world. Therefore, let the last act of your day be the assumption of the wish fulfilled. Lie down in the awareness that it is done. Breathe in the peace of possession. And drift into the deeper currents of sleep as one who has nothing to ask, nothing to chase, but only to enjoy what already is. The outer man may rise tomorrow and walk through the same streets, meet the same faces, hear the same conversations, yet within him the world has changed. And as surely as the dawn follows the night, the outer will take on the likeness of the inner. For the shadow cannot resist the form that casts it, it must conform. And you, by dwelling tonight in the inner form of your desire, have determined the shape of tomorrow's shadow. Then let us walk from this moment as those who have already received. Let us no longer measure by appearances, nor weigh by the evidence of the senses, but by the quiet knowing that what we have assumed is already ours. The world will bow to the image we hold within, not because we strive, but because we are faithful to the end from the beginning. Every word spoken in the silence of our heart shapes the landscape before us. Every feeling we entertain carves the channels through which our blessings flow. We are not beggars at the gates of life, we are heirs moving through our own estate. The banquet is spread now, the cup is full now, the promise is kept now. All that remains is to take our seat at the table, to drink deeply of what is already poured, and to live in the certainty that nothing can withhold from us what we have accepted in the secret place. Go, then not as seekers but as possessors. Live as though it were impossible to fail. Rest in the assurance that the invisible has already arranged the visible to match your inward claim. And as night follows day, so will your world reveal the glory you have dared to assume.